Hey, everybody. David Swor here once again with my buddy DJ Cox and a special guest, Brother Matt Kerns here for another episode of Frenemies. How's it going, Matt?
Not bad. How are you guys doing?
Doing good. So this is Matt. I think this is our first repeat host. Am I right, DJ? Am I thinking right on that?
Yeah, this is the first time we've had somebody on for two different teams here. You did the Blue Jays with us the first time, correct?
Pirates.
Pirates. Oh, that was a rough
Pirates.
Yep.
So now we got him back for his first love, the Reds. This is going to be an interesting episode as we go through their team last year and this year. Kind of a weird season last year. So Matt, why don't you jump in and tell us about the 2020 Reds?
Well, the team came into the season. Fans had high expectations, and I'm obviously a Reds fan, and my expectations were high. They spent quite a lot of money in the offseason to get some guys, Mustakas, Castellanos, Akiyama. They had a pitching staff lined up. Everything looked prime for them to just have a really, really good year. And unfortunately, even making the playoffs, it was a disappointing season, I think, for Reds fans. They struggled all year really with scoring runs. They may have a game or two where they would score several runs, and then they'd go games where they didn't score any runs or one or two runs, and just they were very sporadic on offense. And so for me, it was a disappointing season. Granted, with a 60-game season, it's hard to kind of predict what's going to happen. Or what to expect, but I still think that it was a disappointing season.
I had a question for you, Matt. So this bothered me, and I wasn't even a Reds fan, and it bothered me because I thought it was handled very bad at the end there. So the Reds finished 31-29, and the Cardinals finished 30-28 with 2 games in hand. They were supposed to play the Tigers in 2 games. And now they didn't make them play those 2 games. And the Reds were given the 7th seed, and the Cardinals were ranked ahead of them for the playoffs. I really think they messed it up. Should have forced the Cardinals to play those 2 games against the Tigers because it obviously mattered. And it mattered for the Reds, too. And they could have had a shot of avoiding the Braves in the first round. So what were your feelings about that?
Pretty neutral, honestly. I didn't have strong feelings one way or the other. And based on the way the season went, the postseason to me just kind of mirrored the regular season. If they'd have played game 3, they probably would have scored 10 runs. That's just the way the team went. They would go and not score runs, and then they would have a game where they would just blow up. So I'm not making excuses. That you get in the postseason and you don't score any runs, you're not going to win. I mean, that's just any ball game. So it is what it is from that standpoint.
I'm completely baffled by the call that David Bell made in the postseason to pitch to Freddie Freeman with first base open. He pitches to the MVP. Game over. Matt, what happened, man? Come on. Tell me what happened.
He spit the bits, all I can say. I mean, what do you do there? I mean, there's no reason to do that. Absolutely none. So no excuses. Hopefully, David Bell, new manager, hopefully that's a learning experience for him, and we move on from it and things get better is all I can say is optimistic.
The problem is with that decision is it's so elementary. I know who's hitting behind Freeman, and that's the consideration, but you just can't let him hit right there. I don't think any manager makes that call. And I realize Amir Garrett was pitching, so it was lefty on lefty. Ozuna was next, so maybe he didn't want to go lefty on righty with the season Ozuna's had. But man, you just can't do that right there. So
yeah,
just amazing decision. But let's jump back in a little bit. So DJ, when we went through this last year, I didn't watch the episode. I actually meant to watch it back today. There's no way that we thought that the Reds' Achilles heel was going to be their hitting, right? I mean, it couldn't have been. They added all these guys. They ranked dead last in the majors in hitting. And this, I had to reread this 2 or 3 times. As a team, they hit 212. How is that possible with any, I hate to say this, with any guys, but especially with the guys that they had, Moustakas, Castellanos, Joey Votto, down the list we go. It's just amazing to me. Now, having said that, 4th in the league in a home run, so it's kind of an all or nothing year. But what do you think about that, DJ? Dead last in hitting for the Reds last year.
I couldn't believe it, and this is what baffled me all year about this. And we would talk throughout the whole season. Me and you would talk about the Reds a lot, and we were just like could not figure out how they just couldn't score. And I would have never guessed that. We were talking about guys on their bench that were going to contribute. They were so good, like they were that deep. We thought offensively that some of the guys that weren't even going to be considered starters were going to be very big for them. And man, they all bombed out really bad, and it. Like you were saying, Matt, in the playoffs, it completely bombed out. They got really good pitching, especially from Bauer, and they didn't score a single run in that series, which still baffles me that these guys couldn't score. And I never would have guessed that their pitching would have been their strength. I mean, Trevor Bauer pitched out of the world. I mean, we didn't see that coming. Let's just be honest. Like, we knew he was good, but not that good. And then their pitching was just dominant, and their hitting was pathetic. And they snuck in the playoffs. And their hitting and David Bell kind of were their Achilles heel. I mean, let's just be honest. I mean, it just fell apart for them, and they fell flat on their faces in the playoffs. So I thought it was a disappointing year. I know they made the playoffs, which is great for the Reds to make the playoffs. I love it. Baseball's in a better state when the Reds make the playoffs, in my opinion. I believe that, but just very disappointing from the standpoint of completely shutting down in the playoffs.
So let's talk through the season a little bit. It was a weird one. They started out 2-5. Bullpen blew 3 saves in that span, so it could have very easily been 5-2. Kind of just, I think they were 15-20 through July and August, and then all of a sudden they kind of caught fire and started hitting a little bit, getting some timely hitting. The bullpen straightened up at one point. I think through those first 2 months they had an ERA over 5. The rotation from August the 19th forward, 2.12 ERA, pretty killer. So I'm not a Reds fan. I guess I follow them. But again, pretty disappointing that division was up for grabs, no doubt about it. And the Reds just didn't meet expectations. So let's jump into 2021. DJ, why don't you run through who they lost and who they added?
So the projected lineup for the Reds this year, Shogo Akiyama as a leadoff hitter playing center field, and I'm gonna go right away to you, Matt, on this one. Shogo was a big signing before the 2020 season, and he hit 0 bombs with 9 ribbies and 245 with 38 hits in 54 games. What were your overall thoughts on him, and do you think he can rebound?
I'm kind of taking the approach, honestly, that I'm not going to put a whole lot of stock in the 60-game season. If you looked at any player over a 60-game stretch in their career, there's going to be downsides. That's not to say that I'm expecting him to come out and be a world beater, but, the Reds don't need him to hit bombs. They need him to get on base is the way I kind of look at it. And unfortunately, at 245, he was probably the second highest batting average on the team. And the other thing I think is he probably was not used to playing in a platoon situation, and that outfield was crowded, and I think that probably screwed up the whole outfield, honestly, where everybody never really got into a rhythm. There wasn't anybody that was consistently playing day to day. And so I look for him to have a better year this year, whether or not he's a legitimate star. I mean, I think we would just be happy with a legitimate contributor, honestly.
Nick Castellanos plays right field, 14 bombs, 34 ribbies last year, hit 225, which is down average-wise, but he did produce offensively, no doubt, absolute stud. Joey Votto, future Hall of Famer. I'll fight both of you on that. We were fighting all week about this.
We're going to double back to this, by the way.
11 bombs, 22 ribbies, hit 226 with a 354 on base percentage. That's something crazy. He hit 226, but you get on base at a 35.4%. Both worst of his career. Definitely his worst season ever. Eugenio Suarez will play third, 15 bombs, led the team with 38 ribbies. He only hit 202, though. That's disappointing from the average standpoint. Mike Moustakas, 8 bombs, 27 ribbies. He will be your second baseman, 230 last year. Jesse Winker, left field, 12 bombs, 23 ribbies. Hit 255. Your shortstop will be Kyle Farmer, no bombs, 4 ribbies, 266. Your catcher will be Tucker Barnhart, 5 bombs, 13 ribbies, and 204 average. Aristides Aquino in the outfield and Nick Senzel utility. Tyler Stevenson is also a backup. Kerns, what do you think about Aquino and Senzel? Do you think they're starters on this team, or do you think that the guys that I mentioned that are going to be starting are really the starters?
Well, I think that it's going to depend on their spring training, honestly. Me and David kind of talked about Aquino yesterday. He didn't have much of an opportunity last year, and Senzel was hurt most of the year, so he didn't really have much of an opportunity either. You see flashes from them every now and then. Obviously, Aquino in 2019 had that stellar start. I think one of them is going to have to start. I think you're going to have to put one of them somewhere, either as a DH or in the outfield. So one of the two, I think, will be a starter.
So it seems like a lot of the Reds' problems, they haven't changed. They still got that really crowded, weird outfield. Aquino looks like he's still going to have trouble finding at bats, and I think that's kind of sad because after the run that he went on, it was just like the forgotten guy last year. Senzel was their top prospect the last 2 years. Again, where's he going to play? It's just a weird. The Reds just kind of have a weird dynamic, I think, with their lineup, and I don't know that it's going to be any better. I mean, they got the power. I mean, you ripped off several guys that had over 10 home runs last year, but they got to have somebody to knock in. So it's just kind of weird with that lineup. So Kerns, why don't you run down their rotation? Obviously, they lost Bauer, but still pretty good at the top of that rotation.
Yeah, they're still pretty solid with Gray and Castillo at the front end of that rotation. Castillo really had a good year, but just didn't get the run support. So his, win numbers aren't going to look good. But overall, with he started 12 games for us, 70 innings pitched, 3.21 ERA, 89 Ks in 70 innings. I mean, that's what you want from your stud. So, it's going to be between him and Gray, obviously, to see who's the opening day starter. Gray had a great year, not maybe as good as Castillo, but he still put up solid numbers, 56 innings pitched, 3.70 ERA, and 72 Ks. So both those guys will be the heart and soul of the pitching staff. That they're, will rise and fall on that. So if one of those two guys get injured, we're going to be hurting badly. And then third, we've got Malley. Malley kind of came out of the blue last year. Nobody really expected that. He wasn't part of the rotation. Had it not been for Wade Miley being injured, he wouldn't have been. And Miley suffered the whole year with some injuries. And fortunately for Miley, he just pitched well enough that they couldn't keep him out. So if he performs like he did last year, 1, 2, 3, we may be the best in the league. But, who knows if that's going to continue.
Yeah.
So I had a couple questions for both of you, David. David, I'll start with you. So from this lineup and rotation perspective, the Reds had a really weird offseason. So a couple of things I'm a little worried about with this team as well is there were a lot of rumors around Suarez about trade bait. There were a lot of rumors on Sonny Gray and Luis Castillo as well. So, David, from a perspective of all the trade rumors, how do you think that those three in particular are feeling right now being a part of the Reds team? Do you think it has any effect on their season coming up? Do you think it has no effect? What are your feelings on that?
Well, I think if you're a Major League Baseball player, that's going to happen. The Cubs experienced that this offseason too. Everybody, I think, was available. If I'm on that team, what's frustrating to me is the division is so winnable. It's literally right there. They did all that work last year to bring in those guys. It was so exciting. Like Kerns said, it was a short season. So, you need to bank on what they had done previously, not in a 60-game span. And so, honestly, on paper, they still look like they're just a couple guys away. but they didn't try for any of those big name shortstops. They traded their closer away, which honestly I understand to a certain extent. The closers are up and down, but Iglesias has been a good one. They basically went backwards. I think it's inarguable. So I think if anything, they may have the Nolan Arenado effect here. For these guys that are signed long-term like Suarez and these guys, it's like, well, what the heck? If we're not going to compete now, when are we ever going to compete? So I can see that, at some point being an issue. Just a real disappointing offseason for the Reds.
Yeah, I totally agree. Yeah, totally. The question was about how's it going to affect them this year. Honestly, I don't think that it's going to, because I think the problem with the Reds has been the culture and the management staff for the past however many years. Suarez has been on this team long enough to be part of it, and this is his third season with the team. I just don't think that these guys will be affected by that. But I do see, like David said, if the Reds come out and they start out slow and they're not in it at the All-Star break, fire sale. That's what's going to happen. Those guys are going to be gone. And, at least if they did that, you would know that the Reds have a clear direction. Right now, you don't really know. It's like, why didn't we do something in the offseason? We clearly lost. Like you said, we went backwards. We lost Bauer. We lost who else did we lose here that I would just write down? We lost Bauer, Iglesias. We lost mostly pitching, and we really didn't add anybody that's going to jump off the chart at you. Your biggest offensive signing is a minor league contract to D. Gordon. I mean, I don't know. But you obviously knew you had to fill that shortstop role, and you're relying on Farmer and a guy who's a prospect in Jose Garcia, but he doesn't have any experience. I mean, so you're throwing a guy out there that maybe he will be good, maybe he won't. But if you get him out there too early and you're ruining him, that's just not going to be good for anybody. So why they didn't go after somebody, I have no clue. And that's been the dilemma for Reds fans, I think, for the past several years, is what are we doing?
DJ, what do you think about it? I mean, obviously you follow the Central Division. If you were on this team, what would you think?
I would be completely, to be honest with you, David, and I'm not just saying this because this is our podcast tonight. I don't have a clue what this team's doing. I think out of all the teams in the majors, to be honest with you, this one confuses me by far more than anybody, because they were that close, David, to being a legit team in our minds last year. Like we thought this team is up and coming, and then all of a sudden it just didn't feel right anymore. They had a disappointing end to that season. The offseason was extremely disappointing. I have no idea what they were doing. If anything, they just made them players mad. Let's just be honest. Like if we were on a major league team and you're getting told you're getting traded and you go back to that team, that's not an easy situation. I mean, you can get over those kind of things and play, but I just don't understand it by any means. I don't know what they're doing. I'm not going to sit here and try to pretend I know what they're doing either. I'm completely baffled and have no clue. And I'll go over like the additions: Kyle Holder, D. Gordon, Sean Doolittle, Jeff Hoffman, Noah Ramirez, Nicky Delmonico, and Dwight Smith Jr. And a lot of those guys won't even make the major league rotation in any way, shape, or form. And I guess, Sean Doolittle is your biggest pickup out of all those guys. And, he's a reliever, could possibly be their closer, but that's disappointing. If you're going in a direction like the Reds were, and that's your off season, not at all impressed.
No, I don't get it. Like I said, there was a lot of they had a clear need at shortstop, an obvious need that they had last year, and you have all these shortstops available. Honestly, most of them not at huge money. I just don't get it. I just don't get it at all. So, guys, what do you think the strength of this Reds team is going to be?
I'm going to go with the top of that rotation with Sonny Gray and Castillo. I think that's legit. I don't think you can really mess with those two. Gray impressed me a lot last year. I was a little worried about him. He's been up and down for the most part in his career. He was a stud last year, and you know what you're going to get with Castillo too. Those guys are just absolute studs, and those 1-2. I don't care how they hit. Anytime they get the ball, you got a shot at winning, and I think that's definitely a strength for them. But man, it'll be interesting to see what Matt said at the deadline, where they're at and what they do with those two, because those are some cornerstones they've got right now. And I don't know if they'll be there in Reds uniforms at the end of the year. I'd be surprised as a matter of fact, if one or two of those guys that I just mentioned are gone, but I would not be surprised if they're gone by the end of the season. So definitely their strengths. I would say their offense. I think their offense was last year when we did this podcast. I was all over their offense, but if anything, I think they took a big step back too. So I'm going to go at the top of that rotation.
Kerns, what do you think?
Yeah, there's no question that that's the strength of the team. When you look at Gray and Castilla, I mean, those are the guys you're banking on. I will say, you know, we have harped on the fact that they didn't hit and they didn't hit. But think about this. They still had a winning record and they didn't hit. They still made the playoffs and didn't hit. So if this team just hits like their baseball card says, like their typical average season would be, they'll be solid as can be. Obviously, we have the hole there at shortstop, but you know, if Moustakas and Votto and Suarez and Winker play like they're capable of playing and they hit like they're capable of hitting, then the offense won't be an issue. But that's a big if. So to me, the strength is clearly the top of the rotation. But don't be surprised. I wouldn't be totally surprised if they come out and hit, but I won't be totally surprised if they don't either. I mean, that's just, you know, what history tells you is that, you know, you're gonna more often than not hit to your average. And so I expect them to do better this year. And obviously it's an expanded season as opposed to 60 games. But the top of the rotation is the obvious strength.
So Kerns, I got a question for you. And DJ, you can chime in here as well. How long is the leash on David Bell? So let's say we get into the season, we're a month in, and Reds are middling again or towards the back end of that division. How long is the leash?
Well, I don't know what the relationship's like. I don't know how impressed management is with him. As a fan, if they come out and let's say they come out and they start the season and they say they're 10-15, you know, I'm not saying I'd pull the trigger, but if they keep that up and they don't improve, I mean, I'm not giving him more than a couple months. I mean, it's hard to say that given the guy's only had, was he the manager in 2019? I can't remember off the top of my head.
I'll look that up. I can't remember either.
If he's not, you can't give it. I think you have to give him a little bit of time. I mean, 60 game season again last year to me, 2020. I'm not putting a whole lot of stock into that season one way or the other, good or bad. If he doesn't show me anything else here though, they need to start out strong. If they don't start out strong, then he's certainly digging his own grave.
Yeah. Look, you know, I'm not sitting here and I'm hoping I'm not bashing on the Reds too much here, but you know, I agree with you. I don't see him lasting very much longer if he doesn't turn this thing around. And you know, some of that is obviously not his fault with the way that the GM has handled this offseason, handled this roster. It's been a nightmare for Reds fans because they thought, you know, here we go. And what has always been the problem with the Reds has always been the pitching. They have never had pitching. They'll score 9 runs a game and they've never been able to pitch. And all of a sudden they got pitching and now they can't hit. So it's like, what in the world's going on with the Reds, you know? And so it's complete opposite of what they're used to historically doing. And I don't know, man. I really don't feel like I think he's got a short lease, like you said. I don't know his relationship with management, what that's like, but man, you got to produce, and I don't think he's going to last very long. So, David, did you find out how long he's been there?
2019.
Yeah.
2019 was his first season.
So, given that fact, to me, you know, he's had technically 2 seasons, but really, if you want to give him the benefit of the doubt, you can say a season and a quarter or a half or a third, whatever it was. If the Reds come out, say at the end of May, and they're below 500, you know, I think he's got to go. I mean, when they hired him, I wasn't super excited about it, and I'm not going to be super sad if they let him go. So, you know, just like you mentioned, that the elementary choice in the playoffs with Freeman, that's just a prime example of what you see. The other thing is, you know, we talked about, and I understand where they're coming from, but I think the whole team kind of as a whole kind of pressed themselves last year with that short season. And so, like I said, nobody got into any kind of rhythm at all because every day it was a different lineup. Everybody was playing different positions. it just didn't work. And whether or not that's on him or on the situation, whatever it is, there's no excuses this year. So if you come out of the box 60 games into the season and you're not meeting expectations, I think it's obvious that you're not the man.
Yeah, I agree. I think that leash needs to be fairly short. A lot of times those manager changes in the middle of the season can be bad, but a lot of times it can be really good because everybody gets a clean slate. And I don't know what the dynamic there is with the team, but that is a team that no doubt, even though they made the playoffs, underperformed last year. So I think that leash has got to be fairly short. Like you said, May probably about as long as I would give it to be competitive. So,
well, one interesting thing is they did recently hire Barry Larkin into the organization. Now, granted, this is broadcaster, but a lot of fans for a lot of years have been saying that he needs to be the manager. So you get into May, what would spark the team, or especially the fan base, would be, hey, Barry Larkin's a new manager, and I think it would probably give the team a little bit of a boost too. Not saying that that's going to happen. That's just I can see that scenario playing out.
Maybe Ken Griffey Jr. is the batting coach or something too. Just want to throw that out there. We can all drink, right?
Well, he's actually in a role with MLB. He's I forget what he's actually doing, but I saw that he's got some sort of role with MLB now. So anyway,
yeah. So Matt, I got to go off the rails here a little bit. Something that's not on our list. Let's talk about the Reds broadcasters for a minute. What's your feelings on Jeff Brantley?
He can be annoying.
Yes.
I can handle him in small doses, I guess is what I would say. He's not as bad as I think maybe. He's definitely much better on the radio than I think he is on TV. Let's put it that way. I'm not a huge fan of him. He seems to just say some things that are just blatantly obvious, but it kind of is what it is. I don't have a strong opinion one way or the other. If he's there, whatever. If he's not, that's fine too. But
what did you think about Tom Brennaman?
I was extremely disappointed. If there's one thing about the Reds that outside of the baseball that I would hang my hat on, it's Tom Brennaman. That guy is world-class announcer. It's unfortunate what happened, what he did. It's unacceptable and inexcusable. But to have him leave, it really hurts the organization value, I think. And I was ultimately sad because as a fan, that's who you're listening to day in and day out. And now it's somebody who I don't know. So
yeah, DJ, do you got anything to add in there?
That was just crazy. I don't. Tom Brennaman's historically talked a lot of trash about the Cubs, which makes me not like him very much. But I get the fact that Reds fans love him. I do understand that. He's got a good baseball voice. There's no doubt about it. Very unfortunate that all happened. I don't even have a clue who their new guys are, but I guess we'll see. And we'll see if they get a guy like John Sciambi, who the Cubs got, which I'm extremely happy with. So maybe that's what the Reds fans will get, is somebody that they're even more happy with than those guys. So we'll see.
So right now, John Sadak is their new guy. He's done a lot of hockey, it looks like. I don't know if you've ever heard of him, DJ.
Nope.
He's done a little bit of everything, really. So anyway, we'll see, I guess. We'll see. I'm like Kerns. I really liked Tom Brennaman. I've never been a huge fan of Jeff Brantley. But that's a lot of nights on the radio that I had to hear him. That's all we have here, DJ, by the way. I mean, do we even get a pirate station, Matt, that I'm aware of on the radio?
We used to. They used to broadcast both of them on AM, but I don't know if we still do or not.
Yeah. So Jeff Brantley's voice grates on me.
Do you remember when we went to Cincinnati that one time and we were in the club, whatever those box seats where it was all you can eat, and Tom Brennaman jumped on the elevator with us?
I do remember that. Yeah. Yeah.
That's pretty cool.
Very
nice.
Cool. Very cool.
He was friendly, he didn't say a whole lot, but he was friendly to us and acknowledged us at least. So I thought, that said a lot about him. But
yeah,
I'm just really sad to see him go. I mean, he does, a lot of the national broadcast games, and he, did NFL games up until this incident. And so it's unfortunate for him. I hope he gets another shot because I think he deserves it. Everybody makes a mistake.
Yep.
And, in this day and age, we need to forgive and forget. And he deserves another shot somewhere.
I agree. So, guys, what is your prediction for the 2021 Reds? Where are they going to finish?
Well, I'll go ahead and start there. I got them in fourth. Okay, I really do. I battled with my thoughts on them and the Brewers on where the two teams out of those would kind of fit in here, and there's too many question marks with this team. I really believe that Joey Votto is your 3-hitter, coming off a historically terrible season for him. Not a solid full rotation anymore. Top heavy, yes. The bottom 3 guys got a lot to prove. I just don't know they can hang in this division. I know that this is probably the worst division in baseball, just being honest. From top to bottom, I think it is. And if you're 4th place in the worst division in baseball, it's not going to be a really good season, I don't think. I just don't feel like they're legit. I really don't. I was super excited about them last year, just completely bombed in the playoffs. And I really honestly, and this is hard to say too, I think the Brewers are even ahead of them, and the Brewers don't really impress me either. So it's tough. I hate that. I wish the Reds were up there with the Cubs, and the Cardinals were the team that I was hoping would be in 4th place, not the Reds, but I don't think that's going to happen.
Kerns, what do you got?
Well, I'm going to have to agree with DJ. I actually have them 4th. And maybe that's where they need to be. Maybe that's what will make them maybe thrive this year, is maybe not the fact that there's not expectations. Talking about the Brewers, MLB actually have the Brewers projected as the winner of the division. They got Brewers, Cubs, Cardinals, Reds, and Pirates. So,
oh my gosh,
I think nobody knows what to make of this division, to be honest with you. And that's what's, like you said, is so frustrating.
Yep.
If we get a guy at shortstop to plug that gap, and if we'd have got just another, veteran starter, man, you're basically looking at making the playoffs. So,
Yep.
I don't know. I've got them at 4th. That's where I think they'll finish.
I have them at 4th as well, but I will not be surprised at all if they make a playoff run or possibly win the division. Any of those 4 teams I think could win it. I actually had to pull up each of the rosters and just go through it line by line because that division is so tight. And the way that I look at it is the Cubs got worse. The Brewers got slightly better. The Cardinals got slightly better. And I feel like the Reds got slightly worse. And so I just have to plug them in there at 4th. But I'm with Kerns. That was a short season last year. If they would start hitting a little bit, the top of the rotation is good. Malley showed me something. We've seen Wade Miley be good before. I don't think that bullpen is going to take as big a step back as maybe what people think. They've actually added some guys that are pretty interesting, in those trades. And so I'm going to put them in 4th, but I will not be surprised at all if they make a run into the playoffs. So we'll see. We'll see. So, guys, let's talk a little bit about the ballpark that's in DJ's background right there, Great American Ballpark. We talked about it a little bit last year. Matt, me and you have been there several times together, took advantage of a couple full weekends there. It was pretty awesome. So tell us a little bit about that ballpark.
Well, it's a great place to watch a game. It's down close to the river there in the downtown area there, Cincinnati. The seats that we've always sat in, there's not really a bad view of any place of the seats that we've in. We've actually sat in pretty much anywhere in that park. We've sat in the outfield. We've sat in the club seating. We've sat in kind of the second level mezzanine seating, and we've sat down on the box seats in the front. From that standpoint, it's good for the fans. Obviously, COVID, who knows what's going to happen with fans, but it's a great place to watch a game if we can get there to watch a game. They've got that huge billboard, scoreboard in the left field there. That's always an interesting thing that they always do a good job with that. They always do a good job with the walk-up music for the batters and things like that. So to me, it's entertaining, even if the team is not it's always a good day to just go out and watch baseball, even if the Reds suck. So
Yeah. Let me throw this out there. In my opinion, I've done club seating 2 other places, and it's not even close. The Reds are the best. They have a buffet in there that you can go eat from. When I went to Arizona last year, it was basically like, yeah, here's a cold hot dog, and a cup that's about this big that you can put your drink in. But not a fan of that. But I love Great American. DJ, you've been to Great American a few times. What do you think about it?
I love it. I really do. It's Riverfront I had been to a couple times too before they tore that piece of garbage down. That was terrible. What an awful place to watch a game. And like I said, I loved watching those Reds teams as a kid, but what an awful place to go watch a game. So when they built this one in 2000, or not around 2003, I should say. Yeah, I mean, this one holds 42,000 fans. It's never full, obviously. I wish they would have more support than they do. I love the river. I love the fireworks. I love everything about that stadium. I've sat very, very high up on the top, which makes you give the perspective of seeing the whole city and the river and the field. You get to see a lot from up there. And I've sat down the third baseline. I've sat in a lot of different parts, in that ballpark, and I loved it. I really do. And I think that they did a really good job on that one. It's beautiful. Not really, the food was good too. I like that Skyline chili they got there, man. That's some good stuff. So that's a Cincinnati thing, no doubt. It also amazes me, I guess, being from Chicago, I guess Cincinnati shuts down at night. Like when you're driving around that city at night, it's like nobody's there and you're like, what is going on right now? But I guess that's just kind of the way that city runs. It's real busy during the day. And after a night game with the Reds, once everybody kind of clears out, like there's not much going on, which is kind of crazy too. But I loved it. I probably know more Reds fans, to be honest with you, than I do anything besides maybe Cubs and Sox, obviously, and Braves I know a lot of. But I know a ton of Reds fans, and so I've been to Reds games a lot with a lot of my different friends, and it's always a good time. I love it every time. There's no doubt about it. All the statues that they have a lot of good gift shops in there too. So they do a really good job. It's real kid friendly. So yeah, I'm a big fan.
I'm with you. I totally agree. Easy parking, great place to watch a game. I'm planning Kerns. I'm going back this year. We're getting back up there. So Kerns, why don't you tell us a little bit? We didn't have you on the Reds podcast last year, but tell us a little bit about your favorite players, past and present, and just a little bit about you as a Reds fan.
Well, my favorite Red player is no longer with the team, no longer in the major leagues, and that would be Brandon Phillips. I just like the way that he played, and honestly, for the Reds, he was probably in that span of time that they were somewhat decent. He was one of the most consistent players in the major leagues, and he honestly got plugged in to lead off, second, third, fourth. He batted anywhere in that lineup for him and produced. So that was one thing, but for me, it was always his kind of swagger and his defensive work is always what did it for me. And, he did things defensively that nobody even tries to do. So Brandon Phillips, for me, just because he was kind of like, he kind of brought some swagger to Cincinnati. As far as current players, it's hard for me to pick one right now, honestly, because a lot of the guys that are superstars now, are so to speak, are, aside from Votto, are kind of new, and so you don't have a whole lot of connection with him yet. Like Moustakas, I don't know. I'm hoping that maybe one of these younger guys will kind of fill that place in my heart. But currently, I don't really have anybody that I'm super, I guess, connected to. Luis Castillo, maybe just because of he's kind of the young face of the franchise, but other than that, I really don't have a strong connection with any player at this time.
So DJ, what about you? What's your earliest memory of Reds fandom? I know you're a huge Votto fan now. So
I hate Joey Votto. Let's get this straight. But he's a stinking Hall of Famer. So the 1990 Reds, I'm telling you, David, This team was so fun to watch. I loved every second of that. Lou Pinella was in his prime with the 90 Reds. That fiery little booger, man, he would fight anybody. He fought Rob Dibble. And when you're going after Rob Dibble as an old man, you got some guts, man. Let me just tell you that right now, because Rob Dibble was not a man to mess with. They had the Nasty Boys, Dibble, Charlton, Myers. I love that team. 6 innings pitched from the starters, and it's game over. 7, 8, 9 is good night. You had no shot with that team. Barry Larkin, and a Hall of Famer. When you're in the backyard taking ground balls, you wish you were Barry Larkin. Eric Davis is my all-time favorite Red of all time. He was on that team as well. Paul O'Neill, I love to death. Fiery player. That man had so much passion. He'd fight you as well. He was a great player. I loved Paul O'Neill. Defeated the A's in the World Series, which still to this day is an awesome thing to do, to accomplish, to sweep that team. I couldn't believe that they did that with the Bash brothers. One of my all-time favorite teams is the 1990 Reds for sure. As an individual team, it's probably in my top 10, just the teams that I've watched over the years. But that's by far my favorite memory of the Reds. And runner-up, honorable mention, Kerns, is when Kyle Farnsworth kicked the crap out of Paul Wilson. I wish we could play the video right now. We need an editor that can play video, like as we're talking about stuff.
Yeah,
that would be Cueto and Yadier Molina that got into it. That was my favorite one because I can't stand Yadier Molina.
DJ loves him, so don't talk about it.
Oh no, I hate Yadier Molina. Don't even start with me. Him and Votto should fight, and then I probably wouldn't even have to root. I just love watching him fight.
Yeah. My favorite Reds memories are from old walkathon trips. Matt, our school used to go every year to a Reds game, and that's I guess probably when I fell in love with baseball the most was during that time. So that would have been in those championship years, DJ. And so that I would say that again, that would be my favorite time as well. But we've had a lot of good times there at the ballpark watching old Brandon Phillips. When you mentioned that, Kerns, that brought back some memories. So a lot of good teams. Adam Dunn, we got to see Adam Dunn hit a bunch of home runs there. Some big donkey hitting some big bombs, either that or striking out or walking. So anyway, some good memories with the Reds.
Hey, so David, kind of an add-in onto that. Obviously, we went to Tennessee Temple, and you did too, Kerns, and Chattanooga, the Reds. Like, how cool was that for you, man? I mean, seriously, like, I don't know how many games you got to when you were there or anything, but like when we were in college, David, Austin Kerns, Adam Dunn, like we watched those guys grow up in the minors, like before they got pro, and it was a lot of fun to watch those guys come up and then, turn into major leaguers like that. And yeah, that was a lot of fun having the Reds in our backyard there and going to a bunch of minor league games for the Reds as well. So that was cool.
I hate to admit it, I think I went to 2 minor league games the entire time I was there. One was our senior year when we went and got a scream at those guys for 9 innings. That was awesome. And then once was when they opened AT&T Park, which was pretty cool. So those are the only 2 games. I was broke, man. I couldn't go to no games. So
are you talking about when me and you went and we yelled the whole entire game at everyone that came up? Yeah. I think we had Allison and Nicole with us that time too, and our voices were gone by the end of that game. Those poor guys heard everything from us.
So DJ, let's talk some Reds trivia. Let's see if Kerns is any good at any Reds trivia. What do you got?
Disclaimer here. I have not been a lifelong Reds fan. He just mentioned in college, I didn't even care about the Reds. I didn't become a Reds fan until probably, I'm guessing, 2003, 2004, when I actually went to Great American Ballpark for the first time. They were playing the Cubs, actually, and I was just like, okay, I need to pick a team. They're local, and we can come to games, and I went with the Reds. So I don't really have I may get a trivia question, but don't be surprised. Yeah.
I'll give you guys one. This is a softball.
Go for it.
I'll give you a softball right here. This Reds player was the first player in MLB history to hit 30 homers and steal 50 bases.
Ooh. Steal 50, huh?
He did it in 129 games.
And how many?
129 games. It's crazy.
I'm going to go. Let me go with Joe Morgan. No?
Nope. It's a good guess.
Oh. Brooks Robinson.
How about my boy Eric Davis?
That's what I was thinking. I was like, wait a second. Now he went old school. I'm like, I'm going to think back to like somebody.
Yeah.
I thought it might have been Eric
1986,
Davis.
129 games. He was slapping that leg every time a fly ball came out there. I used to love some Eric Davis. He had that huge chewing tobacco, that huge jaw right here. I love me some Eric Davis. Those are some good memories.
How did I not get that? I'm so disappointed in myself. That's by far my favorite Reds player of all time, and I should have known. You forget sometimes about the stolen bases with him, but man, could he run. He was awesome at stolen bases. Doggone it. I'm mad. That was the obvious answer, and I blew it. So, all right, here's my trivia question for you guys. This is kind of cool. So how old was pitcher Joe Nuxhall when he made his MLB debut for the Reds? Now, this is an MLB record for the youngest guy to ever play in a major league game. Was he 15, 16, 17, or 18, David?
I want to say 16.
What do you think, Matt?
I think he was 15.
And Matt, you are once again correct because David just doesn't know what he's talking about. 15 years old. David, that is nuts. He's the youngest player ever to play in the MLB. He was quoted as saying, I was pitching to 7th, 8th, and 9th graders. Then all of a sudden look up and there's Stan Musial. Nuxhall didn't get out of the inning, giving up 5 walks and 2 hits, 5 runs allowed, and didn't play MLB again until 8 years later, where he ended up with 135 and 117 as a career win-loss record with a 3.90 ERA in 16 seasons, 15 of which were for the Reds. That's awesome. 15 years old in the pros. Wow.
Yeah, that is crazy. Those must have been some desperate times.
Yeah.
For the Reds calling up a 15-year-old. So
Sounds like it was a publicity stunt or something if you call the guy up when he's 15 and then he doesn't play again for 8 years. So
yeah.
Something ain't right there.
Yeah.
So, all right, Kerns, you got any trivia?
No, I failed on that task.
That's
I
okay.
thought you guys you would have that covered for me, so I didn't delve in that.
That's all right. Well, let's shift gears here a little bit.
I thought of one real quick.
Okay.
How many Cy Young winners do the Reds as an organization have?
All time?
All time.
I'll go 3.
David, you said 1?
Yeah.
1.
In your face, DJ.
Last year, Trevor Bauer. Yeah.
What?
Yeah.
No Jose Rio, no Tom Browning. No, are you kidding me?
That is kind of hard to believe.
Well, you know what, though? I mean, it's the Reds, and they're historically known for their offense and the terrible pitching, like I was saying earlier. So I guess it does kind of make sense. But
Yep.
wow.
Well, let's shift gears, guys. It's spring training. Pitchers and catchers have reported. Fantasy sports is heating up. A lot of guys are doing drafts or getting ready for drafts. And Kerns, you're a fantasy guru. We brought you on here for an expert opinion. So let's talk about draft strategy. Now, DJ's draft strategy is to always be in last place so he can get the first round pick the next year. But tell us about a winning draft strategy, Kerns.
Well, yeah, he does seem to be the the cellar dweller there. Maybe if he wouldn't pick so many Cubs, he might actually participate and compete. But anyway,
I can't wait.
So the way I kind of talk, the way I would kind of break it down is, if you're serious about it, somewhat serious about it, I think you need to have a pre-draft strategy. And from what I mean by that is, you just don't show up to the draft and say, okay, here's a list of players. So what I would recommend, and obviously it depends on the league settings and what type of league you're in. We're all in a head-to-head league in the Tennessee Temple League and other leagues. So that's kind of what I would base my comments here on. But you want to know going into the draft, the rankings of the players. And personally, I like to personally rank the players. These so-called experts are a dime a dozen. And quite honestly, history has shown me that they're not any really smarter than me. And I'm not saying that to toot my own horn. I'm saying it from the standpoint of form your own opinion, listen to what they're saying and then form your own opinion. And so I would recommend creating your own rankings, have a cheat sheet ready, ranking each player at each position. And then what I would also like to do is kind of tier off the positions. And so, you'd have the top tier, maybe this the top 5 players of position, and just, you can kind of tell normally in your own opinion where that fall off is between in the players. So for example, if we were rating shortstops and I have Tatis, Turner, and Story and Lindor, and then it goes down to Bogarts, Bichette, Seager, I'm kind of drawing the line there at Lindor and saying, okay, everybody below that's going to be a bit of the second tier. Everybody above that's going to be top tier. So that would be my first step, is just kind of establishing a cheat sheet and ranking players based on your own personal preference.
Real
I
quick,
think the other thing, yeah.
At what point, in those first few rounds of the draft, you're going best available most of the time. You're not really drafting position. You're just, because in that first few rounds, you're trying to get top tier players. But at what point do you start worrying about, okay, I've got to start filling these positions?
Well, so if we want to jump to end draft strategy, what I would say, typically, like you said, the first few rounds, you're trying to get the best available player, but it's going to depend too on your position in the draft. And what I mean by that is, if I pick 10th in a 10 league team, then I know that I'm going to get 2 picks in a row. But it also means there's going to be several picks between my last pick and the next pick. So if a position starts to thin out, then I'm going to place a higher value on that position. For example, maybe a second baseman. Maybe there's 10 solid second basemen, and I want to make sure I get one of them. If 9 of them are off the board and the 10th guy isn't super high rated, I may push his value up a little bit, just for the fact that position is becoming weak. At what point in the draft do you do that? It just depends. Each draft's different. I think you have to go into the draft. Personally, what I like to do is like I said, I tier off my players on the cheat sheet. And so I would like to get a top tier player at every position. That's my goal. It doesn't always happen, but that's what I try to do, is I get a top guy at first, second, and I'll try to fill out my roster based on that. The round on who I pick just depends on who's available at that position and what my rankings say and who I think is going to be the top performer for me. So that really, I don't know if that answers the question that you had, but that's really kind of where I would rank it on. Is it depends on your draft position and where you're at. If you're in the middle of the pack, you can kind of play it a little more safe. If you're get towards the end, one end or the other of that draft, you need to make sure that you may have to value some guys a little bit differently than you would, say, if you're in the middle.
I got you. So you mentioned rankings. You asked us earlier in the week to do some position rankings. So why don't you share some of that with us there, Kerns?
All right, I'm going to try this here. We tried to have some difficulty pregame here, so let's see. So I'm going to start with the catcher rankings. So these are our consensus fantasy rankings for catchers. And so I highlighted a couple guys just to kind of, I guess, create some conversation here. Mm-hmm. I'm really shocked that you didn't rank Gary Sanchez in your top 10.
Well, if you've been a listener to our podcast, I pretty much hate Gary Sanchez most of the time. Now, and to be, I said that, I'm about half joking. What I'll say about Gary Sanchez is he hasn't been good now in basically 2 seasons. And so he would be a great value pick, I think, in some drafts. If you had room for a second catcher, or maybe you got towards the end. But I couldn't pick Gary Sanchez right now in my top 5 or 6 catchers anyway, just because, he hasn't been good in like 2 years. And last year he was epically bad. I mean, they literally just couldn't play him. So I think something's broken upstairs, to be honest with you. And that's why I couldn't put Sanchez in there.
I got you. Well, you can see, obviously, the number one consensus, pretty much whoever you ask on any fantasy level, JT Vermuto is the #1 catcher across fantasy experts. And then I kind of ranked these players based on our position. So we had Perez came in overall second, and then Contreras at third, Smith fourth, and you can see the list as it goes on. But so DJ, you ranked James Mccann probably higher than any of us. Tell us a little bit about him.
Yeah, so Mccann, coming off couple pretty good seasons for the White Sox, part-time player for the most part, going to get a full shot with the Mets. He's a pretty good hitting catcher, so I felt like of all the guys on that list there, you can go a lot of different directions, as you can see by this. We honestly we were all over the place on this, but yeah, Mccann, I got a high thoughts on him. I think he's better than Grandal. I thought when the White Sox had them both, I thought Mccann was the better hitter of the two, to be honest with you. What a great problem to have is two catchers like that, but I think Mccann is going to have a breakout year, no doubt, being full-time with the Mets. So I ranked him pretty high there.
I got you. Well, I see you guys both ranked Travis d'Arnaud over me. So I'm wondering, David, what your, I guess, thought process is with him and what you feel like. For me personally, he's been a little inconsistent, really outside of last year, hasn't really been consistent. So how do you feel with him being a top 10 catcher?
Well, I scratched his name on and off my list about 4 times. And really what it came down for me with d'Arnaud was he seemed to have kind of found it. And it's more than just the 60-game season last year. He had kind of found it into the previous year, into 2019. He's going to be in a good lineup. And for that reason, I think he's going to have a lot of RBI opportunities. And the other thing about d'Arnaud is he's able to play some other positions too. And so he has a chance, I believe, to get some more at-bats than maybe some of these other guys who are stuck as a catcher. So that's kind of the reason I would put d'Arnaud in there.
I got you. Well, for me, it's probably a little personal. I did put him in my top 10, but he's bit me one too many times in the butt when I've drafted him and he underperformed for me. So I did rank him in the top 10, but kind of begrudgingly. I kind of actually wanted to put, like DJ did, Mitch Garver in that top 10. I think he may actually be a guy that we can look out for from a fantasy perspective to kind of be a guy that's going to make that leap into maybe a top, 6, 7, 8 catcher.
Well, listen, but I'm still mad at Mitch Garver for last year. I wasted a good pick on him after he had a great 2019, and he was terrible. So, Mitch Garver, if you're watching this, I hope you are. I hate you. No, I'm just kidding.
All right, so that's all for catchers. I'm going to stop this one now. In all fairness here, these guys have not seen these rankings, so they're seeing these rankings for the first time on the consistency. And I'm going to show the first baseman now here.
Mitch Garver, you suck.
All right, here's our first baseman. Now, let me preface, David ranked Bellinger in the first base slot, and me and DJ both had him as an out.
Oh, what are you doing? He's a first baseman. Get out of here.
He's listed there on ESPN's rankings. I'm gonna throw that out there.
Yeah. He is eligible, I think, in a lot of leagues at first base. I think that's probably going to fall off this year when he's playing predominantly outfield. But again, we have a consensus #1 overall. Freddie Freeman tops the list here. Not really a lot we need to say about him. He's solid, consistent. So #1. We've got Abreu at #2, surprisingly. We all ranked him #3. So, David, you're high on Abreu. Tell us why you're so high on him.
Guys, I love consistency, probably to a fault, to be honest with you. Jose Abreu is consistently awesome. And last year, obviously, being the MVP, even more so. And the other thing about Abreu that I think improves his prospects is his lineup is better than it was last year. And it was good last year. And now it's just a little bit better. And so I know age is going to catch up with him at some point. That's probably in the near future. But, man, I don't see how you could go wrong with Jose Abreu as your first baseman. And I would definitely put him above, obviously, the guys that I have on my list there. I mean, there's some great first basemen. I love Paul Goldschmidt. He's another guy who's been consistent. But Abreu has been great for several years now, and so that's why I would rank him second.
I got you. Well, then we see Alonso comes in third on our rankings, Goldschmidt fourth, Rizzo at 5, and then Luke Voigt 6. Matt Olson, kind of a guy that is kind of maybe undervalued a little bit. And then you got Max Muncie. So both you guys ranked Matt Muncie, and I didn't have him in my rankings. So DJ, tell me why you got Max Muncie in this list.
Well, Max Muncie's in a lineup, first of all, that's going to produce a lot of RBI opportunity for him. Hitting in that lineup is just absolutely stacked and loaded. And if you have any Dodgers, I feel like all those guys are going to be fantasy gold in that lineup. Those guys just mash. So Muncie kind of stood out to me for being, one of the guys there that I would definitely put there. But man, I had a hard time. I'm not going to lie to you. The bottom of that list there with Josh Bell too, and Matt Olson and Max Muncie, that's tough. There was no doubt I was putting Vladdy 10th there because I still think he's got some stuff to prove. But those three guys, I had a really hard time placing those three particular in different spots. They've all got their ups and downs a little bit. So that one I struggle with a little bit, no doubt.
And then we got Guerrero and then Bella to top out our top 10. And I was the only one of us to kind of go with a flyer here at 10, and I picked Hoskins. I really think he may have a bounce back season this year. The Phillies are kind of under the radar, I think. They were a team last year that had high expectations, and I kind of thought they were probably too high. But I do think that he's been a solid, consistent, as David said, kind of hitter for them. And so I ranked him in the top 10 there. I kind of think that he's due for a bounce back this year. So let's go on here to second.
I'll be honest with you guys while you're flipping that, Kerns. I don't get – y'all are going to think I'm nuts, okay? I don't get the Vladimir Guerrero love. So we've got 2 years of Vladimir Guerrero now. I know the lineup has improved. That's going to help. But what is it that makes you think that Vlad Guerrero is going to bust out this year?
For me, I think it's just the lineup that he's in has improved, and I think that he's battled through some injuries, and he's still very young, and I think the talent is just too great for him to not succeed, honestly. Maybe I'll be wrong, but that's just the way I kind of felt about it.
And I get it. Like I said, I'm not saying he's a bad player. I'm not saying he's not going to bust out, but like I said, this goes back to I love consistency to a fault. In 2 years, he's like I said, he's just been pretty average at a real high output position. So maybe this is the year he busts out. He's still young. I think he's only like 25 or something. So I understand, I guess, but if he was my first baseman at the end of that draft, I'd probably be upset.
Well, the good thing I guess I would say about that is talking about draft strategy here. You could take a chance with him as being that bust out player. And first base is so deep, you could get a guy that could easily plug in like a Hosmer or somebody like that to that position. So I wouldn't be too concerned. You could hit fantasy gold there, or like you said, you maybe boom or bust, but I think he's worth a shot there because of the potential of him having that breakout year.
Yeah, I agree with that. That's a good point.
And let's be honest, sometimes you win your fantasy league based on some of these guys that have breakout years. And so if you're going to think about a guy that could have a breakout year, he's definitely got to be up towards the top of the list of somebody who could. So,
yeah.
All right. So here we go. We've got the second base rankings. We got prepare for the humor section of this podcast. As you can see, we all quietly vary here on second baseman, but the rankings overall, DJ LeMahieu, number 1, Ozzie Albies, number 2, Whit Merrifield, number 3, and Brandon Lowe at number 4.
Wait.
And surprisingly, I'm the only person that ranked Ketel Marte. What's up with that?
Wait a minute.
Time out.
Wait 1 second. Kerns,
let's fight.
How is DJ LeMahieu not first?
How is DJ LeMahieu not first? Okay.
How is he not first?
So here's my thinking. I've had DJ LeMahieu in a dynasty league, and that if you're not familiar, for those of you who aren't familiar, a dynasty league is a league where you keep the same roster year in and year out, just like a major league team. He doesn't leave your team until you trade him or cut him. And so I've had him for several years, and he was always solid, but he was not a 30 home run hitter. And I don't anticipate, you're talking about consistency and things of that nature. I don't know that I can trust him to be that guy.
But Kerns, he's won 2 batting titles. He's been the Yankees MVP for 2 straight years, and he's in the best lineup in baseball.
Well, as you can see, Ozzie Albies was my number 1 pick. So he's on a lineup that's just every bit as good in the Yankees from my perspective.
DJ LeMahieu is Ozzie's daddy. I'm sorry. I just have to disagree with you.
Well, that was the reason I went with Albies, because he's a little bit younger. LeMahieu's a little bit older. So you get to that point where, kind of like we're with Vada, what age do you start tailing off and what age do you start peaking? And I think Albies is on the up, and I think LeMahieu's on the down. Obviously, I rated LeMahieu second, so it's not like I hate him. I just thought Albies is probably poised to have a better fantasy year.
Yeah. To answer your question about Marte, I struggled with that one really hard. I did. And again, I don't have the stats in front of me, but it went down to consistency. Ketel Marte, I think that's how you say his name. He's had one really good year, and everything else has been super duper average. So that's why I couldn't fall in love with Marte personally.
What do you think, DJ?
No, I don't even have him on my list. That one good year is not going to do it for me. If you're a good one for one season, then I got no love for him either. Man, I'm telling none of you. Well, I guess I'm not seeing any love from David for Marcus Semien either. I mean, this guy was only the runner-up for MVP 2 years ago, and he's not even. Huh?
I thought I had him on my list. Maybe not. If I didn't have him, I meant to be honest with you. That was just I would have put him probably in probably about number 7 or 8 personally.
Yeah, you could have bumped that Madrigal guy completely off your list and put Semien on there. I mean, the guy that almost won the MVP, and you got this little guy who's 5'1" and has hit 220 and might not even start for them in your number 10 spot.
He hit 320 last year. He is one of the top prospects in baseball. And Semien, now I like Semien, but he's had one good year. And it was an extra special year. But he's had one good year. But that was just an accidental omission on my part.
Okay, well, I won't fight you too bad if you're as long as you're admitting your mistake.
Speaking of mistakes, go ahead.
I was going to say, I'll be honest with you. I left Biggio off my list because he was eligible at a couple different positions, and I just didn't feel like he was strong enough at either one of them to put him in the rankings. But I do think, talking about guys again that may have a breakout year, he's a guy to watch. I'm not sure that he will, but definitely a guy that has, I guess, some high expectations.
Yeah, he's a third baseman.
Well, this back end of this list is tough. Seriously, there's about 5 or 6 guys you could honestly interchange in right here, and I don't think you could be wrong. But 2 of the guys I think you could try to interchange, and you would be dead wrong, are David Bodie and Jake Cronenworth. DJ, take the Cubs colored goggles off. Why in the world would you put David Bodie on this list?
Kerns, who led the Cubs in RBI last year?
I believe it was David Bodie.
It was David Bodie, David Bodie.
So what?
He has an awful first name. I'll give him that. Okay. But this guy had 29 RBI for the Cubs last year in a very limited role. He's going to be the man this year. He can mash. He's clutch. And clutch is everything in life.
And just so everybody in our podcast, if you're still hanging on listening, Kerns, tell all of our listeners where ESPN ranks David Bodie.
I believe he was ranked 40th at second base.
At third base. Let's back up. 40th at third base. They're not even sure if he's starting. And then the person right under him is our boy Jake Cronenworth. So who is the Padres starting second baseman?
Yeah, see, you got me here. It's
not Jake Cronenworth.
Hasu Kimiku or whatever his name is
Nope.
that they signed.
I haven't heard if Jake Cronenworth is going to start. I mean, Kerns, what do you think about that?
I'll be honest with you, I hadn't heard of him until his name popped up here on the list.
Well, DJ has, and he thinks he's awesome.
This kid almost won Rookie of the Year. Don't beat me up too bad.
Cronenworth's a nice player, but I don't think he's going to be starting. David Bodie has no business on this list. I mean, zero business on this list. I struggled a little bit with Kesten Huera too. Man, he was awesome. I had him on my fantasy team 2 years ago. He was the bomb. The Brewers have now moved him to first. And so I think he could be a sneaky pick there at second base. That's why I stuck him there. But to be honest with you, Colton Wong was a bad omission on my part too. I sort of forgot about him. He's a nice player. But second base is tough, man. You get past those first 5 or 6, 7 guys, I guess, and you could plug anybody but David Bodie in there and you'd be right.
Or Nick Madrigal.
This to me is where the tiers come into play. You can see the drastic shift here. Once you get past 4, you're kind of starting to go, okay, I'm not feeling so great about these guys.
And what's
you
crazy,
obviously have some shots.
Habitual cheater who DJ will put in the Hall of Fame, Jose Altuve. Again, if you're going back to consistency, other than last year, man, Altuve's been a top 2 or 3 guy. And so that hurt my feelings a little bit having to put him back there. I don't know what was going on last year, but man, that's a sneaky guy. You could put him in there and you might have the top second baseman. You don't, maybe. So he's kind of sneaky.
Yeah.
But
So
Whit
David,
Merrifield is the man. Whit Merrifield, David is the man. That's number 2. Whit Merrifield is great. I love Whit Merrifield, David.
I know.
You should get a cool Whit Merrifield shirt.
I'm real uncomfortable with it. It's making me nervous.
Well, let's end the second base discussion, David, with your last pick there at number 10. Tell us a little bit about him because people like me, I've not heard too much about him. So tell us about him and why you ranked him 10.
So he hit 320 last year, and it wasn't limited time, but he is the White Sox. If he's not their top prospect, he's way up there. He's been a top 100 prospect for a while. He's in a great lineup. And so, I think he's definitely a bust out candidate, to be honest with you. That's kind of why I put him there.
I got you. All right. Well, that's it for second. Let's go to third base now.
No home runs and 11 ribbies. Ooh, plug up those fantasy points. That's awesome.
He only had 100 at bats. Man.
All right, here we go. Here's our third base overall rankings. We've got Machado 1, Jose Ramirez 2, Arenado 3, Rendon 4, Bregman 5. That's our top 5. So I've got Arenado as my number 1. Maybe it's a man crush type deal. But
it is. Kerns has him a crush on some Cardinals. It used to be Matt Holliday. Now Arenado's there.
Former Rockies that are Cardinals is the way.
Yes. Yes.
But honestly, that dude to me is just he's just an absolute beast. And I think he's going to come out this year and just absolutely destroy it. I may be wrong, but he, to me, if you're looking for the home run and RBI categories is what I try to fill at the top of my draft. And that's who I'd go with. And that's why I've got him ranked number 1.
Now here's my fight on you. You look at his numbers at Coors and you look at his numbers at other stadiums.
That's my problem.
Night and day. That's my big problem with Nolan Arenado.
I think Nolan Arenado is a great player, but I think he's going to go from superstar to star. In other words, I think he's obviously still one of the best third basemen in the league, but I don't think he's going to be elite anymore. I could be dead wrong. You might be right. He might hit 50 bombs. And obviously being on a competitive team, I think is going to mean a whole lot to him. And so it's hard to quantify that. But if I'm just looking at pure stats, he's got a big home and away split. Although his home runs don't seem to go down. I think he was dead even 2 years ago in the home run category, but his average fell like 40 points. And so, he still might be the man. He definitely was with the Rockies, but I had to discount him based on those splits.
Well, the flip side of that, I think, he is in the Central Division. He's going to play in some very hitter-friendly ballparks quite a bit. For example, Great American Ballpark, PNC Park. There's a couple of parks he's going to play where he can mash. So, so we all agreed that Jose Ramirez comes in at number 2, and then you guys went with Manny Machado at the top of the list. I'm not big on Machado, honestly. He's another guy that I've drafted before that's kind of underperformed for me. And so maybe that's a grudge that I'm holding. But so DJ, tell me why is Manny Machado the clear-cut number 1 for you?
Well, to me, you could have made a really, really good case for him being the MVP last year. You could have, and I think there was about 4 or 5 different guys in the entire league, in the National League, that you could have voted for MVP, and you would not be wrong. And I think Machado was one of those guys. This Padres lineup is much improved, and I know we kind of talk about that with all these guys, but when you got guys who are really good 1 through 9 in the lineup and more opportunities to drive in runs, this team is going to be super exciting. I think they're totally energized, and I think Machado's hands above everybody else on the third base rankings for sure.
We've got Rendon overall at 4th, but is there anybody on this? If there's anybody on this list, I would say I think he's kind of the under the radar guy, even though he's coming in at 4th.
Yeah, I agree. He had a great season last year, and it kind of nobody said boo about it because the Angels were so far out of it most of the year. Even though DJ said they were going to win the division, but they were they were out of him. He plays with Mike Trout, who overshadows him a little bit too. But yeah, if I could get Anthony Rendon as the 4th, fourth third baseman off the list, man, I'd be
Oh yeah.
All right, so then we got Bregman, who's put up quality numbers there with the Astros, but again, he's kind of got that Astro taint to him, so to speak, that nobody wants to maybe delve in there. And then we've got Rafael. Is that Devers? Is that how you say that, David?
Yeah. Devers,
whatever.
Yeah.
And then our Cincinnati Red boy, Eugenio Suarez.
DJ, come on, man.
Dave, you ranked him higher than me even, so.
Yeah, you can't go wrong with Suarez, man. I mean, again, we're going back to consistency. He's a 40 bomb guy for sure. He's going to get you around 100 RBIs, and he's not going to hit 202. He's never done that before. I'm a big Suarez fan. We'll just see how the Reds, with the attitudes we talked about that, how that's going to work out. But I love Suarez, and I love him way better than Matt Chapman or Kevin Biggio. Come on, man.
Matt Chapman is a stud.
All right.
And Eugenio Suarez almost hit 199 last year. Let's remember that.
David, gun to your head, are you taking Suarez or Chris Bryant?
Say again.
If you had a gun to your head, are you taking Suarez or Chris Bryant?
I'm taking Suarez.
God, no. What are you talking about?
Yeah, I'm taking Suarez, man. That would be a tough decision because Bryant, I went back and looked at Bryant's numbers. Last year was really bad. But really he's been pretty consistent as well. So if you're flipping a coin on those guys, either way, but I'm taking Suarez personally.
Listen, let me make my little spiel here about Chris Bryant. I do not understand why he has been getting so much hate recently. He doesn't deserve it. He had one bad year. He had an okay 2019, but this guy has consistently been awesome every single year. I don't get it. Be completely fine when he hits 35 bombs and drives in over 100 runs this year and can kind of shut everybody up on him because he doesn't deserve it. He's a great guy. He needs to fix his swing, but I think it's completely crazy that you have Alex Baum ahead of Chris Bryant. David, what are you doing with Alex Baum?
Well, let's put the brakes. So here's Chris Bryant for the last 4 years. 73 RBIs, 52 RBIs, 77 RBIs, and 11 RBIs. That, my friends, is not as good as Suarez. That's why I would take Suarez first.
Yeah, I'm going to have to agree with David on that. Bryant kind of has this, I don't know what the word is. He came in highly touted, and he met expectations, I think, when he first came out. But his last 4 seasons have not produced from a fantasy stud perspective. And this is what we're talking. We're not talking about real life baseball. We're talking about fantasy baseball. And I can't see any of the guys that I have above him. I can't see him overtaking any of those guys. Now, he may prove me wrong, and I'm sure DJ hopes he does, but man, I think he's underperformed, and like DJ said, there must be something wrong with his swing or something. But
well, and Suarez last year, he would have had his 3rd straight year with 100 RBIs, 3rd straight year, 49 home runs in 2019, 34 in 2018. Suarez is the better player right now. I mean, he is. Now, maybe Chris Bryant turns it around. That wouldn't surprise me. It would not surprise me at all. But again, if you're sticking a gun to my head, give me Suarez.
Well, yeah. Bryant gets over 100 runs. His on-base percentage is close to 400 every year, which is also a factor in fantasy things too. So I think there's a lot of things that you're not seeing about the complete offensive game of Bryant here. I know his numbers RBI-wise are a little down, but what's that?
4 years. I don't wear Cubs goggles. That's what I'm missing.
Yeah, I think you'd be hard pressed to find another player in the top 10 at any position that's got those numbers. So I think the expectations are high, and I think people realize they can see the talent there, but they're just kind of hoping that he puts it together, and that's kind of why I've got him ranked so low.
Yep.
Bryant's career on-base percentage 380, Suarez 340.
So we're going off the last 3 years, dude. And on-base percentage, that is a category, but homers and RBIs are where it's at. Hey, watch out for my boy Alec Bohm. Watch out for my boy Alec Bohm. I'm telling you, man. He hit 338 last year, short season. He's on that Phillies team where there should be some RBI opportunities. Watch out for Bohm.
So let's move on to shortstop. And honestly, shortstop may be more stacked this year than any other year I can remember.
Mm-hmm.
We've got Tatis as the unanimous number 1 for obvious reasons. He just signed this huge extension with the Padres. Trey Turner came in as the consensus over number 2, and then Lindor at 3. So maybe I'm seeing the Rockies thing again here, but I don't get the hate for Trevor Story here.
I'll tell you and it's not hate for Trevor Story. I think Trevor Story's a good ball player. But number 1, his surrounding cast isn't going to be as good. How much difference is going to be, I don't know. Can he stay motivated when he's going to be completely out of the race? Those are 2 questions I have. And the third question I have is he going to be traded? Because, again, huge core splits, huge. And so that's why normal circumstances, if the Rockies were going to have a good team, Story's probably my second guy too, but there's just too many question marks there.
Yeah. Good point. So tell me why you guys like Trey Turner so well. I ranked him 4th. DJ's got him at 3rd. David, you got him at 2nd.
Mm-hmm.
He's the guy to me that he's a stolen base machine, but really aside from that, he's not flashy in any other category.
Wait a minute.
The league in batting average last year, if I'm not mistaken.
Last year was the bust out we've been waiting on. So 335, 12 homers, 41 RBIs, and he had those 12 stolen bases. So I'm banking on the bust out, The couple years before that were good, maybe not great, but, he's been a top prospect in baseball for a while, and it finally kind of all came together last year. So I'm banking on him being more last year Trey Turner than in 2019 Trey Turner.
Fair enough. Again, I'm not putting a whole lot of stock in the last year, positive or negative, so that's probably why I've not got him ranked higher. I really, really like Francisco Lindor. He probably, to me, has the most value here because people love Tatis, and so that's where I think, people are going to try to get him probably in the top 10 overall in the draft. But Lindor really, to me, could put up just the same statistics, and you could probably get him 2 or 3 rounds later.
Mm-hmm.
So then we got Seager at 4. You guys both like Corey Seager more than me. So DJ, tell me what you like about Corey Seager.
Well, I think he busted out in the playoffs and had probably the greatest playoff that anybody's ever had from the shortstop position. 25 RBIs in the postseason, which is unbelievable. I just think he's ready to mash. He's ready to get that big contract. He's in a contract year, which, let's be honest with you, that matters. He wants to play well, so he's locked up for a long time. He's got a lot to prove from that perspective. Those guys like that who already have the talent and are going for the big contract, the Dodgers are kind of handing out like monopoly money right now. He wants that money, trust me, so he's going to play really, really well this year, and I really believe he's one of the top shortstops in the game.
Yeah.
Well, so I kind of discounted him because to me, you go back and look at his stats. He's never had a season with 100 RBIs. He's never had a season with 90 RBIs. If you're talking about a shortstop, which obviously that's not necessarily an RBI position, but to me, all these guys that you got above him are going to produce for sure. I think more consistently than he has shown. Now, obviously, there's, like you said, the potential there for that breakout. But to me, I can't buy into him yet as a top 5 guy.
What you got to remember about Seager, he was young, really young, those first 2 or 3 years, and they were good years. Maybe not great, but good. Well, then he had the Tommy John surgery. And so 2019, so again, I'm banking on the bust out. He's in the best lineup. Their lineup's better than the Yankees. And last year would have been a 100 RBI season easy, and he probably would have hit 40 homers. And so again, I'm banking that's Corey Seager, not necessarily the Corey Seager that was coming off of Tommy John's surgery.
All right, so David, you've got Tim Anderson in your top 10. He's the only one that you're the only one that ranked him. So tell us why.
Batting title winner 2 years ago. He followed it up with another great season, hit 322 with 10 homers. He's in the best lineup in Chicago. It's not even close. And so I like Tim Anderson. If I got him as as the 7th shortstop off the board, I'd be pumped.
What's that meme that they got out there?
The Yankee meme, by the way.
I hate it.
Thanks, DJ, for that great commentary. I will say this. I feel like Correa could be anywhere on that list, and I'd be okay with it. I feel like he could have a season that could even put him in the top 5, so I couldn't argue with it. And the other person I say that I probably got too low is Baez. Again, I gotta think that he's going to be not last year Baez, but he kind of a little bit reminded me of Sanchez, and I think he was lost. And so I had to discount him a little bit, but again, it would not surprise me one bit if he shoots way up that list.
Yeah. So I've got D.D. Gregorius at 10 and nobody else ranked him.
I respect that.
To me, he's the most underappreciated shortstop.
Yes.
Even outside of fantasy, I think.
Yep.
We were talking yesterday, David, about, the Reds and the need at shortstop. Man, I would love for him to be a Red. I think he would produce some really good numbers and push that team over the top. What do you think, DJ, as far as D.D. Gregorius and his outlook for this year?
Well, I believe last week we were talking, David, and I was bringing up D.D. Gregorius and maybe one of our last shows that we had before we did the previews. And, man, his numbers kind of just baffled me, to be honest with you. I didn't realize how great of a hitter he was and how consistent he's been for the last 5 years. And, yeah, man, I completely agree with you on that one, Matt. I mean, if you got him on there, I respect that, no doubt. I'd even, my Bo Bichette pick there, Gregorius is more proven than Bichette by far. I'm going more on instinct and what I think Bichette can actually do. But if you're going off the 10 consistent guys, Gregorius is definitely going to be on that list, no doubt. And I think that was a sneaky move by you to throw him on there. I completely agree.
Well, the thing here that you're going to be able to see probably is when we're talking to whole what is it you say your 3 listeners, subscribers, whatever. But if we're talking about fantasy overall, there is going to be so much value with a Didi Gregorius pick. I don't even know where he ranked on ESPN's list, but when I saw he was as low as he was, I thought, man, how is this guy as low as he is? But to me, he's a guy that you can consistently count on, and you're going to be able to get him late. So if you miss on a guy, for example, that's in the 9 positions above him, he's not going to hurt you if he's your starting shortstop.
Right.
So that's why I feel like he's going to be have an extreme value in drafts, especially in the later rounds. I think he's going to maybe slide under the radar a little bit here.
Yeah. I can
All right. So that's all for our rankings. We just did the infield this week. We will, I guess, at some point in the future, work on outfield and pitchers. We kind of wanted to spread out the pitchers, and so the outfield kind of is crowded as well. We'll probably do a top 30 list or something on them.
Yeah. Well, that sounds good, man. That honestly it was good to go through that. I feel a little bit more prepared for our upcoming draft. So that was cool going through that. I understand now why DJ's always last, and I've always wondered, and now I get it. I'm just kidding. Yeah. All right, guys. Well, it's been a great episode as usual, Kerns. We appreciate you coming on, and looking forward to seeing what the Reds do, man. One of the most interesting teams, and looking forward to playing some fantasy baseball here pretty soon. But I guess we better wrap it up. DJ, appreciate it. Matt, we appreciate it. And to all of our listeners out there, please subscribe to our podcast on YouTube. It's called Frenemies, and we sure appreciate it. But you guys have a good night.
All right, everybody.